It's time for Warhammer. Today's battle report will be between the Daemons and the Bretonnians. This is Game 5 of our 1,000 points tournament series with the Bonepile Miniatures Gaming Club. There are 6 players and 6 armies in this tournament, and each faces off against each other once during the regular season. And then there will be a double-elimination playoffs following the regular season. But this is Game 5, as you can see. Looking at the standings thus far, both of these teams have 0 wins and 1 loss. The Daemons lost to the Dwarfs most recently, and then the Bretonnians lost to the Tomb Kings. One of these 2 teams will walk away with their first win, and the other will be disappointed with a goose egg in the wins column. But now let's meet the 2 teams. First we'll look at the Daemons. These are the Daemons of Burning Skull Valley. They are led by a herald of Khorne named Claw. He carries a Hellblade, which gives him the killing blow. He has also been upgraded with 2 gifts from Khorne. He has been given Massive Stature, which is 20 points, and gives him +1 wounds, for a total of 3 wounds. He has also been given the Ward of Chaos, which is a 3+ ward save against missile attacks. Altogether, this guy is worth 180 points. And fighting with Claw will be 2 units of Bloodletters, 15 Daemons each, and a full command for both units. The Bloodletters carry Hellblades, which gives them the killing blow. Each unit is worth 225 points. This army also brings 2 units of Flesh Hounds, 5 hounds each, with a champion in each unit. Each of those units is worth 115 points. And then finally there's a unit of 10 Chaos Furies. They are worth 140 points. The grand total for this army adds up to 1,000 points. And here's the army breakdown. Now let's look at the Bretonnian army. This is the army of Baston, led by Bohemond de Baston. But he is not a full-powered Lord-level character in this game. He comes to us as a hero-level paladin. But he is mounted upon a Bretonnian warhorse, carrying a lance and shield. He has also been upgraded with the virtue of the Joust, which is 20 points, and that allows him to reroll to hit on the charge. He also has the Grail Vow. He comes in at 129 points. Riding next to him is another hero-level paladin. He is mounted on a Bretonnian warhorse. He carries a lance and shield. He has the Grail Vow, and he is also the battle standard bearer. He comes in at 134 points. And riding with them is a regular Grail Knight, and he is a musician. He is worth 47 points. And they have brought a unit of 12 Knights of the Realm. They carry lances and shields, wear heavy armor, and are mounted upon barded war horses. They are worth 318 points. There is also a unit of 6 questing knights. They ride barded war horses, and they carry great weapons, heavy armor, and shields. They are worth 192 points. I also failed to mention that both units of knights have a full command. After those knights, there's a unit of 20 men-at-arms. They all carry halberds and have a full command and wear light armor. They come in at 130 points. And then there's a unit of 10 peasant bowmen. They have no armor and no command. They are worth 50 points. The full Bretonnian army adds up to 1,000 points. And here's the army breakdown. Let's have a look at the battlefield. This is a 4x8 table, and this was set up using our club's random landscape generator that we have put together. In the video description below, you will find a link that takes you to a description of our random landscape generator, which is on our hobby blog, bonepileminiatures.com. But for this battle, we rolled up a grassland for the landscape setting. And then all the terrain items that you see were placed randomly on the battlefield. Up front, there's a normal hill with a mysterious river flowing out of it. There's a sinister statue and 2 mysterious walls and fences. There's also a normal sign and a lone tree. On the other end, there's a couple of more trees and a pond. And here's a look from the other side. Next up is deployment. The Daemons deployed on the side with the mysterious river. They are set up with the unit of bloodletters on the left flank, then a unit of fleshhounds on the center left, the other unit of bloodletters in the center, with Claw deployed with the unit, more fleshhounds on the center right, and then the Furies on the right flank. Bretonnia is set up with their Grail Knight Paladins on their left flank, followed by their men-at-arms. The Knights of the Realm are in the center, and then on the right flank, the Peasant Bowmen and the Questing Knights. And before the game begins, the Daemons can make some vanguard moves. They take one of their Fleshhound units from the left flank and hook them into the center at full speed. And then the other unit of Fleshhounds only inches forward. Now the battle is set up and we are ready for turn 1. And the Daemons will begin the game. So we will start where we left off. The vanguard unit of Fleshhounds continue to bolt down the center of the battlefield. Both units of Bloodletters march forward. The other Fleshhounds do a reform move to avoid the river. And then the Furies take off into the air and move forward a few inches. And all those movements will complete their turn. Over to Bretonnia. And Bretonnia will hold the advance so that they can pray to the Lady of the Lake. They pray for her protection as they strive to fight this battle with honor. This will be their turn 1. Daemon's turn 2. No charges yet. Remaining moves. The chess pieces are in motion. The vanguard Fleshhounds continue marching up the center of the battlefield. The left flank and the center unit of Bloodletters continue marching forward as well. The other Fleshhounds continue swinging to the left side, but they are falling behind a bit. And then the Furies on the right flank continue flying at double speed, which we call soaring. As I've mentioned in other videos, our club has its own flying rule set, and I will try to explain as we go. But there will be a link in the video description about a video that I've put together that explains our club's flying rules. But for now, the Furies are in the air, and they can remain there for as many turns as they would like to. They don't have to land on the ground between each turn. And as long as they are in the air, no ground units can charge them. And in case you were wondering, the bloodletters on the left flank activated the mysterious effects of that sinister statue. Our club has a 3d6 list of random mysterious effects from sinister statues, and the one we rolled had no effect upon the unit, and I didn't even write down which one it was. All we know is that the unit of bloodletters was not affected by it. So that puts an end to the Daemons' movement phase and their turn. Bretonnia turn 2, movement phase. The Bretonians advance their left flank, the men-at-arms marching in order to keep up with the Grail Knight Paladins. Over on the right, the bowmen advance marching forward up to the shore of the pond, and the other units of knights hold their positions. And that will conclude Bretonnia's turn. And the Daemons have no charges yet. Remaining moves. The Fleshhounds unit in the rear does a reform move to face forward. Now they are far behind the rest of the assault. The Furies also continue flying at double speed. They are now across the river. But of course they are still in the air, so they did not activate the mysterious effects of that mysterious river. Both units of bloodletters also continue marching forward. And the vanguard unit of fleshhounds is closing in on their first target and meal. And this army of Daemons have no shooting or magic. They just go straight for the jugular in close combat. This will be the end of their turn. Back to Bretonnia. Bretonnia does not declare any charges. Remaining moves. Bretonnia advances their left flank to counter the Fleshhounds. That includes the Grail Knight Paladins and the men-at-arms. All other units in the army hold their positions. Shooting phase. The peasant bowmen target the Fleshhounds. They will get 10 shots, but at long range. But there's also a lone tree blocking part of the line of sight, so one column or 2 shots was eliminated from the volley. So the unit ends up rolling 3 hits on the Fleshhounds, and then for wounds they roll 1 wound. The Fleshhounds have a 6+ armor save and a 5+ ward save. So the Fleshhounds roll and they miss their armor save, but they do score their ward save. 1 save, preventing the wound. The bowmen almost got one, but this will end the shooting phase and Bretonnia's turn. Daemon's turn 4. Still no charges declared. Remaining moves. Most of the units move forward at double speed, except for the vanguard unit of Fleshhounds. They only move 5 inches, trying not to give the Bretonnians too easy of a charge on their turn. Since they are not in combat yet, that is all the Daemons can do for their turn. Back to Bretonnia. And Bretonnia does not declare any charges. As I've mentioned in other videos, the charge distances in our club rules are a little shorter than you are used to. For charges we roll 2d6 and then only select the highest die rolled. Then we add that highest die to the normal M value of the unit. So those men-at-arms decide to pass on charging into those hounds. Remaining moves. The questing knights on their right flank moved forward 8 inches, and then all other units held their positions. Bretonnia showing a lot of poise, playing the patient game. Shooting phase. The peasant bowmen target those flesh hounds one more time, and now there's no trees blocking their view. They will get one more chance to thin down the pack, but their target is still at long range for their weapons. They fire their 10 shots at the flesh hounds, and this time they score 0 hits. They missed them all. The men-at-arms will have to face the full force of that pack of beasts. So that ends Bretonnia's shooting phase and their turn. Daemons turn 5, movement phase. They open by declaring the first charge of the game, the vanguard unit of fleshhounds into the men-at-arms. The men-at-arms elect to hold. The fleshhounds roll for their charge test and they pass it. They make it in. And then the men-at-arms pass their fear test. They can use the leadership of the nearby Grail Knights. Remaining moves. All other Daemon units march and soar forward at double speed. The next wave of Daemons is on Bretonnia's doorstep. But now it's time for the first combat round. The fleshhounds into the men-at-arms. And since the fleshhounds charged, they will get +1 initiative, and Daemons of Khorne get +1 strength on the charge. So they make their 11 attacks into the men-at-arms, and they roll 8 hits. And then rolling for wounds, they score 3 wounds. And then the men-at-arms are unable to save any of those wounds. The strength of the attacks too great for their light armor. 3 men fall, but now they get to strike back with their halberds for +1 strength. They also get 11 attacks, and they end up rolling only 3 hits. And then rolling up for wounds, they score 0 wounds. Nothing. Combat resolution. Despite their superior numbers, the men-at-arms lose this combat to the fleshhounds. They will have to take a break test. But before we do that, we have a club rule which we call cumulative leadership. And this rule assigns penalties and bonuses to units according to their results of their close combats. And these penalties and bonuses can accumulate to ±3 of the original unit's leadership value. And this rule is meant to imitate the ebb and flow of courage and confidence in units during the course of a battle. So in this case, the fleshhounds will gain a leadership and the men-at-arms will lose one. But of course the men-at-arms will take their break test off the leadership of the nearby Grail Knights. So the leadership penalty will not affect them too much at this point. And the result of that break test is that they pass. They will stick around for another round. So that will end this combat and the Daemon's turn. Back to Bretonnia. Bretonnia turn 5, and they do not declare any charges this turn. But on the left flank, the Grail Knight Paladins do a reform move. Unfortunately for them, the Fleshhounds were not in their front arc. But this reform fixes that problem. Over in the center, the Knights of the Realm reformed into their lance formation. They will need this tighter formation to weave their unit through a crowded battlefield. And then on the right flank, The questing knights rode forward about 12 inches, coming in on those bloodletters. And then the peasant bowmen do not move, and will go right into the shooting phase as the bowmen target the bloodletters unit in the middle of the field. But once again they'll have a tree in their way which will block 2 of the shots. And this time their volley generates 2 hits on the bloodletters. But then rolling for wounds, they score 0 again. More bad luck for the bowmen. But that was another long-range shot. Combat phase. We'll see if the men-at-arms can drive back those flesh hounds. But the flesh hounds will get to strike first again. They throw their 11 attacks, and this time they generate 8 hits. And then rolling for wounds, they come up with 6 wounds on the men-at-arms. And they cannot save those wounds. So 6 more men will fall. Time for them to strike back. They throw 11 attacks into the hounds again, and this time they roll up 4 hits. And then rolling for wounds, they score 2 wounds. Due to the strength of the halberd weapons, the flesh hounds cannot save those wounds with their natural armor save. But they do try their ward save, but fail. So 2 hounds will perish. Combat resolution. The flesh hounds beat out the men-at-arms once again. The hounds will gain a leadership point, and the men will lose one. But the men will take their break test on the paladin's leadership, and his leadership should be a 9 since he has the Grail vow. So the men roll for their break test, and they fail it. And then they get a re-roll due to the nearby battle standard bearer, and they fail again. They have lost all courage against these ravenous flesh hounds. But then they run only 4 inches from the flesh hounds, and they decide to pursue. And the flesh hounds are easily able to catch the unit. The hounds continue to devour the men without resistance. But in our club, the unit does not get automatically destroyed completely. The hounds only inflict wounds according to the unit strength of their own unit. And that will be 3 more wounds. And on top of that, the standard bearer for the unit also drops out automatically. Bretonnia is down to 8 men-at-arms in that unit. But this will end this combat round and Bretonnia's turn. Daemon's turn 6. No charges for this turn. Remaining moves. All units not in combat march forward. 1 unit of bloodletters is bearing down on the questing knights, and then the other unit is veering off towards the Grail Knight Paladins. Combat phase. The flesh hounds continue to tear into the fleeing men-at-arms. 3 more men fall defenselessly. Only 5 are left in the unit. And that will end the Daemon's turn. Back to Bretonnia. Bretonnia opens their turn 6 by declaring a charge. The questing knights on the left flank into the unit of bloodletters. And this is not the bloodletters that have the Herald of Khorne, but they decide to hold anyways. The questing knights can charge using the swift stride rule, but they are close enough that they did not need to roll their dice. They make it into combat with the bloodletters, and they passed their fear check. Bretonnia has 1 more charge to declare. The Knights of the Realm into the flank of the flesh hounds. They will also use their swift stride rule, and they will easily make it in to close combat with those hounds. And they too pass their fear check. And that's the end of the charges for Bretonnia. But now they will try to rally the fleeing men-at-arms. They roll for their rally test, and this time, they pass. Their courage is renewed by the rescue of the knights from their fleshhound tormentors. They turn around to face those evil dogs. Maybe they want to watch them get skewered by the knights. Remaining moves. The Grail Knight Paladins decide to back up a few inches. And then the peasant bowmen continue to hold their position near the pond. Shooting phase. The peasant bowmen look across the pond for a new target. This time they target the bloodletters for another long-range shot. This time they end up with 2 hits. And then rolling for wounds, they score 1 wound. The bloodletters try their ward save, and they score it, preventing the wound. Khorne is looking out for his minions. Combat phase. The Knights of the Realm into the flank of the Fleshhounds. The Knights will have the initiative since they charged, and they will use their lances. The Knights roll for 11 attacks, and they end up hitting with 4 hits. And then rolling for wounds, they score 4. All 4 hits make wounds. And then the Fleshhounds are able to make 1 ward save, but that is not enough, leaving 3 unsaved wounds to finish them all off. All the dogs are skewered by the lances, and the knights continue to overrun by 7 more inches. Bretonnia will earn full points for that unit of Fleshhounds. The men-at-arms can sigh some relief, and we'll move on to the next combat. The questing knights into the bloodletters. 6 knights against 15 Daemons. But the bloodletters will strike first. Although the knights have a charge bonus for initiative, they have a penalty as well for their great weapons. So the bloodletters roll for 11 attacks. They end up scoring 6 hits. And then rolling for wounds. They come up with 5 wounds, and one of them is a killing blow. The questing knights tried to save the other 4 wounds, and they saved them all with their armor save. And then they failed to save the killing blow with their ward save. So 1 knight will fall, and now they get to strike back with 1 less knight, giving them 6 attacks. They end up scoring 3 hits, and then 2 of those hits go through as wounds. And then the bloodletters fail to save either of those wounds. Next, the 5 warhorses get to strike, and they cause 1 hit, and then 1 wound. But the bloodletters are able to save that wound with their ward save. So 2 bloodletters will fall. Combat resolution. And the knights are able to edge out the bloodletters in this round. The knights will gain 1 leadership, and the bloodletters will lose 1. And then they must take their special break test called demonic instability. They end up failing that test by 2 points, and therefore 2 more Daemons will vanish into the ether, leaving 11 bloodletters left in the unit. That wraps up this close combat, and that finishes Bretonnia's turn. Daemon's turn 7. They open their round by declaring a charge. The bloodletters with Claw, the Herald of Khorne, into the Knights of the Realm. The Knights decide to hold, and the bloodletters pass their charge test. They make it into the front rank of the Knights, and they pass their fear check. Remaining moves. The 2nd Fleshhound unit and the Furies continue moving forward towards the battle with the Knights. Combat phase, starting with the Bloodletters and the Knights of the Realm. And first to strike will be the Herald of Khorne. He has 3 attacks to throw at the Knights, and he ends up hitting with all 3. And then rolling for wounds, he scores 2 wounds. The Knights normally have a 2+ armor save, but that is reduced due to the strength of the attack from the Herald. So they roll for their saves, and they score them both. Both of the Herald's wounds are prevented. The Bloodletters attack next. According to base contact rules, the Bloodletters will get 8 attacks on the Knights. So they roll for hits and they come up with 4. And then rolling for wounds, they roll those 4 die and end up with 4 wounds, but no killing blows. The Knights roll for 4 armor saves and they score 2 armor saves. The Bloodletters also reduced their armor save value due to their attack strength. Then they get nothing for their ward saves. So 2 Knights are saved and 2 fall from the Bloodletters. The Knights get to strike next. They end up getting 4 hits on the Bloodletters, but then 0 wounds. And then the Warhorses strike and they miss all of their attacks. So Bretonnia had a stroke of bad luck with their dice on that turn. Combat resolution. And the Bloodletters win combat 6-3. The Bloodletters will gain a leadership and the Knights will lose one. And then the Knights must take their break test. And they pass. They will stick around for another round. Maybe better luck next time. Next combat. Over to the Questing Knights with the other Bloodletters unit. They are down to 11 Bloodletters and 5 Questing Knights. But the Bloodletters will go first again. With their 11 attacks, they generate 5 hits. And then 2 of them go through as wounds. And they are both killing blows. And the Knight's ward save fails to save them. So 2 more Knights fall. The Questing Knights only get 4 attacks back. They roll and get 1 hit. And then rolling for a wound, they come up with 0. And then the Warhorses miss all of their attacks. The dice went cold this round for Bretonnia. Combat resolution. And the Bloodletters win this combat as well. Leadership is adjusted for both units, back to their original values, momentum swinging the other direction. And then the Questing Knights take their break test, and this time they pass. They are not done with the Daemons, but they are on their heels a bit. But that concludes this round of combat, and the Daemons' turn. Back to Bretonnia. Bretonnia has no charges for this round. Remaining moves. The Grail Knight Paladins have a dilemma on their hands. There's 3 eligible units they could attack. But these knights don't suffer from indecision. They assume the Knights of the Realm can handle themselves in combat. So they decide to move and wheel around to face the immediate threat of the Furies bearing down on their army. And then the men-at-arms do a reform maneuver, but they failed a swift reform. They might be aiming to help the Knights of the Realm with those Bloodletters. And then the Knights of the Realm pull off a combat reform so as to maximize their attacks. And then the peasant bowmen continue to hold their position on the back of the pond. We'll go straight into the shooting phase, with the bowmen targeting the fleshhounds again. This time their shots generate 2 hits. But then rolling for wounds, they come up with another 0. long-range shot again, but these guys are bringing no glory for Bretonnia. Combat phase. We'll head over to the questing knights and the bloodletters on the right flank. 3 knights against 11 bloodletters. And the bloodletters will strike first again. They will have 9 attacks on the knights, and they end up scoring 6 hits. And then for wounds, they score 2 wounds, and one of them is a killing blow. And then the knights are able to save the other wound with their armor. One more questing knight falls to the bloodletters. And now the questing knights only get 3 attacks back. They end up scoring 1 hit, and then that 1 hit does go through as a wound. The bloodletters try their ward save and fail, so 1 bloodletter also falls. And then the horses all miss their attacks. Combat resolution. And the bloodletters just barely edge out the questing knights. The knights will lose another leadership and the bloodletters will gain 1. And then the knights must take a break test. And this time they fail. They have had enough of those hellblades with the killing blow, and they will run. But of course the unit standard will be left behind, and the champion will run alone. But he also loses the blessing of the lady. So he rolls for his fleet distance and scores a 7, which is not very far, and the bloodletters choose to pursue him. And they roll, and they catch him. They get an 8. The questing knights have fallen. The bloodletters will score the full points for their unit, plus the banner. And we will move on to the next combat. The Knights of the Realm are battling their own unit of bloodletters. Maybe they'll have better luck than the questing knights. But the Herald of Khorne will strike first. And once again he has 3 attacks. He rolls and scores 2 hits on the knights. And then for wounds he scores a goose egg. No wounds from him. Next the bloodletters strike, and they will have 10 attacks. They end up rolling 6 hits on the knights, and then they score 5 of those as wounds, and 2 are killing blows. The knights cannot save those ones, but they do save the other 3. Now in response, the knights get to strike, and they have 9 attacks. They end up rolling 5 hits on the bloodletters. And then for wounds, they roll up 4. The bloodletters try their ward save, and they get nothing with that. So 4 bloodletters fall to the knights. And then the war horses, they score 1 hit, but then 0 wounds. Combat resolution. This time the Knights of the Realm barely edge out the bloodletters. Leadership is adjusted accordingly, and then the Daemons must take their demonic instability test. And this time they end up passing their test. So none of the bloodletters will vanish into the ether. And this will end the combat round for Bretonnia and their turn. The Daemons have some charges to declare. First will be the Flesh Hounds into the flank of the Knights of the Realm. And the Flesh Hounds pass their charge test. And then the Knights of the Realm also pass their fear check. Next, charge. The Chaos Furies declare a charge on the Grail Knight Paladins. And since they are still up in the air, they will have to do an air-to-ground charge maneuver, which we call a swoop. The swoop is a U-shaped maneuver. Starting from the air, they swoop down, rolling a D6 plus their normal M value. At that point, there will be a one-off attack in both directions. And then the unit will swoop back up to finish the U maneuver on the opposite flank back into the air. And that will be determined also by a D6 plus M roll. So for the charge distance, the Chaos Furies pass their swoop test. And we'll leave the unit there until the combat round has occurred, and then they will swoop back up if there's any of them left. And then the Paladins also pass their fear check. Remaining moves. The other Bloodletters, after destroying the questing knights, continues to advance on Bretonnia's right flank. Back to the combat phase, starting with the Furies and the Grail Knight Paladins, and they will strike simultaneously. So the Furies will get 8 attacks on the Knights, and they put 7 hits on them with a good roll, and then 3 go through as wounds. So the Grail Knights need 3 armor saves, and they get 2 of them. 1 goes through, putting a wound on the musician. But all 3 knights get to strike back. They will make 8 attacks, but not with the lances. The knights end up with 5 hits, and then rolling for wounds, they score 2 wounds. And then the war horses tack on 2 more wounds, for a total of 4, and the Chaos Furies ward save does not come through on any of them. So 4 of them are killed, and the rest swoop back up into the sky. But 1 dead Grail Knight for the cost of 4 Furies is not a bad deal for the Daemons. However, we still must add up combat resolution. And the Grail Knights win combat resolution by a mile. And the Furies have to take their demonic instability test. And this time their luck swings the other direction, and they fail miserably. Enough so that they lose the rest of the unit to the ether. Maybe Khorne didn't want to see the rest of his pets slaughtered. They did their job by killing that Grail Knight. Then Khorne called them back home. But more points for Bretonnia. Next combat. The Fleshhounds with the Bloodletters are double-teaming the Knights of the Realm. And the Daemons will strike first, beginning with the Herald. He gives the Knights his 3 attacks, and ends up rolling all 3 as hits. And then rolling for wounds, he scores 2 of them. And then the Knights save 1 of those wounds with their armor save. And then they save the other with their ward save. So no final wounds from the Herald. Next to strike is the Fleshhounds. They will get 11 attacks into the Knights' flank. They end up scoring 7 hits on the Knights. And then 5 of those hits go through as wounds. And then the Knights score 1 armor save and then 1 ward save. And the Daemons are getting their armor modifiers for their strength. That allows 3 wounds to go through from the Fleshhounds. The Bloodletters are next. They will get 10 attacks on the Knights, and they land 5 of those for hits. And then rolling for wounds, they score 2. And then the Knights scored 2 armor saves. There were no killing blows that time. So no wounds from the Bloodletters. Time for the Knights to strike back, and they will put all their attacks into the Bloodletters. But they are down to only 6 attacks. They roll and end up scoring 3 hits. But then only 1 wound on the Bloodletters. And then those Bloodletters are able to save that wound with their ward save. And then all the war horses get to strike, and they miss all of their attacks. So bad luck for the Bretonnians. They score no wounds in return. Combat resolution. This round might have been a stalemate if the Fleshhounds had not charged in and caused their 3 wounds, tipping the combat into the Daemons' favor. They will gain a leadership, and the Knights of the Realm will lose one. And then they must take their break test. They roll for their test, and they pass it. They haven't lost courage yet. But that will end that combat round and the Daemons' turn. Back to Bretonnia. Bretonnia is out of position for any charges. Remaining moves. On the right flank, the peasant bowmen pivot backwards a little bit to get a better view of the bloodletters. And then back in the center field, the paladin knights and the men-at-arms both do reform moves of their units to get in better positions for upcoming combats. The paladins facing the rear of the bloodletters and the men-at-arms aiming at the fleshhounds. Shooting phase. The peasant bowmen target the bloodletters coming down their right flank. It's time for them to shoot like their lives depend upon it, because they do. But they will get a moving penalty with these shots. So they shoot off 10 arrows at the bloodletters, and they score 2 hits. And then for wounds they score nothing again. Did these guys miss their training or something? They have not caused a wound yet. Over to close combat. 5 Knights of the Realm are locked in combat with a bunch of fleshhounds, bloodletters, and a Herald of Khorne. The Herald starts with his 3 attacks. He rolls and scores 1 hit. And then rolling for wounds, that 1 hit does go through as a wound with a killing blow. The Knights can only try their ward save, and it fails. So the Herald drops another Knight. Next to strike will be the Bloodletters. They throw their 10 attacks. This time they land 7 hits on the Knights. And then rolling for wounds, they score 5 of them. The Knights must save or die at this point. And in fact, one of those was a killing blow. Now, because of the strength modifier, these rolls need to be a 3+. So they roll for their armor saves and they score only 1. They get a terrible roll. And then their ward save also comes up with nothing. All of the Knights are slain. The Knights do not get a chance to strike back. They are wiped out. No need for combat resolution. But all the Daemons involved get a +1 bonus to their leadership. And then the nearby Bretonnian units must take panic tests for nearby annihilation. The Grail Knight Paladins pass their test, and then the men-at-arms also pass their test. But it may have been smarter for them to just run. They are about to face a reoccurring nightmare. And then finally the Bloodletters do take advantage of a free reform. There's only 2 Knights left on the battlefield. 2 worthy prizes as offerings to the Khorne gods. And it will be the Daemons' turn next. Daemons turn 9, and they've got the momentum in their favor. In the center of the battlefield, the Daemons declared 2 charges, the Bloodletters and the Herald, into the Paladin Knights, and then the Fleshhounds into the men-at-arms. And both charges passed their charge tests, and both Bretonnian units pass their fear checks. 2 more battles coming up this round. Remaining moves. The other Bloodletters on the right flank continue moving towards the bowmen at their steady pace, wheeling around the pond, but not in too much of a hurry. Combat phase, starting with the Bloodletters against the Grail Knight Paladins. And the Knights are severely outnumbered, and the Herald of Khorne will strike first again. And this time he throws his 3 attacks, and he scores 3 hits. And then rolling for wounds. All 3 go through as wounds, and 2 of those are killing blows. The Grail Knights are desperate for some saves, and they are able to use their armor save on the 1 wound that was not a killing blow. And then all they can do for the killing blows is try their ward save, and they do score 1 save that way. So 1 final wound goes through from the Herald into the Knights. But each of these Knights has 2 wounds to give, so they are both still fighting for now. Next to swing will be the Bloodletters, and they only have 8 attacks due to base contact. And they end up scoring 5 hits. And then 4 of those hits go through as wounds. And 3 of those wounds end up as killing blows. Very devastating. So the Knights score 1 armor save on the wound that was not a killing blow. And then they score 1 ward save for the killing blows, leaving 2 to go through. So that will be enough to kill one of the Knights and then wound the other. These Knights are in serious trouble, but now they get to strike back. And since they had the same initiative as the Bloodletters, both Knights can strike. And they will combine for 6 attacks. And they end up scoring 1 hit. Another pathetic roll. And then that hit does score a wound, but the Bloodletters are able to save it with their ward save. So no wounds from those Paladin Knights. And then the horses add 1 hit, but 0 wounds. Combat resolution. And the Bloodletters dominated the Knights on this one. The battle standard bearer will be cut down, leaving the Paladin General with 1 wound remaining. Leadership values are adjusted accordingly, and then the Bretonnian Knight must take his break test. So he rolls for his test, and he passes the test. He will not disappoint the lady and will fight to the bitter end. But the Daemons will score the points for killing the battle standard bearer. But before we move on to the next combat, this triggers a club rule that we call the Killed Leader Reaction. Whenever a hero or lord is killed in battle, the Killed Leader Reaction chart must be consulted. The results are determined on a D6 roll for each unit if the general has been killed. But for other heroes, any unit within 12 inches of the killed leader must roll on the chart. And in the case of the battle standard bearer, both the men-at-arms and the peasant bowmen are too far away to roll on the reaction table. But the Paladin Knight General does have to roll on the chart. And here's the reaction table on the screen. So the Paladin General rolls a 4. That reaction does not apply to him since he is not a wizard. So effectively no reaction occurs from the death of the battle standard bearer. So now we can move on to the next combat. The Fleshhounds against the Men-at-Arms. It's 5 against 5, but the Fleshhounds will strike first. The Fleshhounds will get 11 attacks, and they end up scoring 6 hits. And then rolling for wounds, they score 4 wounds. And the strength of those attacks are too much for their armor saves. So 4 of those men will fall, leaving just the champion to strike back. He has 2 attacks. He rolls and scores 0 hits. The Fleshhounds are unfazed. combat resolution. And the Fleshhounds easily dominate this fight. Leadership values are adjusted accordingly, and then the men-at-arms champion has to roll for his break test. And this time he will be on his own. He is too far away from the general's inspiring presence. So he rolls and he fails. He is gonna run from these nightmare dogs. He turns around to flee and he runs 5 inches away. The Fleshhounds decide to pursue and they catch him. That's the end of the men-at-arms. The Daemons will score the points for that unit, and this will be the end of their combat phase and their turn. We'll go back to Bretonnia for whatever is left of them. The battlefield is looking bleak for Bretonnia. They are down to a wounded general and 10 peasant bowmen. But this tournament is not just about victories, it's about total points scored. So we must play on. Quitting would not be in Bretonnia's best interest. But they have no charges to declare this turn. Remaining moves. The peasant bowmen decide to back up as far as they can from those Daemon bloodletters, hoping to buy themselves more space to fling as many arrows as they can. Shooting phase. The peasant bowmen fire off a round of shots at the bloodletters, but they do suffer a movement penalty. This time they roll and score 7 hits. Where did that come from? And then rolling for wounds, they score 2 wounds. The bloodletters try their ward save and they missed them both. So finally the bowmen score a couple wounds on these bloodletters. Maybe too little too late, but it's better than nothing. Combat phase. The wounded paladin stands alone against the bloodletters and the herald. First to strike will be the herald, with his 3 attacks into the paladin. So he rolls and scores 2 hits. And then he rolls for wounds and scores 1 wound. But that 1 wound is a killing blow. So no armor saves for the knight. The knight tries his ward save and he fails it. That is his last wound and the knights are done. The knights met their match with the Daemons and their killing blow Hellblades. The Daemons score the points for killing the general, and then they take advantage of a free reform. The peasant bowmen are all that's left of Bretonnia. No charges from the Daemons. Remaining moves. The bloodletters on the flank close the distance between them and the bowmen, coming around the pond. And then the Fleshhounds do a reform move. The other bloodletters do not move. Since there's no combat, that will be the end of the Daemon's turn. No charges from Bretonnia. They continue to back up the peasant bowmen, getting away from those bloodletters. But the Fleshhounds are not far behind. Shooting phase. The peasant bowmen try again to shoot down those bloodletters bearing down on them. But they will have another shooting penalty, and they get off their 10 shots. And this time they hit with 3 hits. And then they roll for wounds and they score only 1. And then the bloodletters try their ward save, and they save it. No wounds on the bloodletters this time. That will end the shooting phase. But I did fail to mention at the end of the last round that the bowmen had to take a test on the killed leader reaction chart due to the death of the Paladin Knight, the army general. So the bowmen rolled on the reaction table and they scored a 2, which made them take a fear check. And then they failed the fear check, so they have fear for the unit that killed the Paladin. But that's not the only unit of nightmares that's hunting them down. We'll go back to the Daemons' turn. And the Daemons declare a charge. The bloodletters into the peasant bowmen. And the bowmen elect to stand and shoot. And then to make things worse, the fleshhounds also declare a charge into the rear of the bowmen. And both units end up passing their charge tests. The bowmen are in a load of trouble, but first they get their 10 shots from their stand and shoot charge reaction that also comes with the shooting penalty. And this time they score 6 hits. And then rolling for wounds, they score 5 of them. And then the bloodletters try their ward save, and they only score 1. So 4 bloodletters are dropped as they charge in to the bowmen. I think they are just as surprised as everyone else. Now let's go straight into combat, and the fleshhounds will get to strike first into the rear flank of the bowmen. But we almost forgot, the bowmen must take their fear checks for both units, and they end up failing for both of them. Things keep going from bad to worse for these bowmen. So now the fleshhounds get their 11 attacks, and they end up scoring 9 hits. Absolutely ferocious. And then they end up rolling 8 wounds. And since the bowmen are equipped with no armor, there's nothing they can do about those wounds. So 8 bowmen are ruthlessly shredded to pieces. And now with only 2 bowmen left, the bloodletters have less base contact and can only get in 4 attacks. So they roll and end up scoring 3 hits. But then they score only 1 wound, which is a killing blow. So 1 more bowman is killed, leaving 1 remaining. So the last standing bowman tries his one pathetic attack, and since he's racked with fear of the bloodletters, he generates 0 hits. Combat resolution. And the Daemons easily win combat over these bowmen. Leadership values are adjusted accordingly, and the bowman must take his break test. And his break test fails. He will run. And since the fleshhounds caused the most wounds on his unit, he will run from the fleshhounds and through the bloodletters. So he initially rolls a 5 distance to get away. However, that's only in his dreams. As he runs through the bloodletters, he takes his dangerous terrain check, and he fails. They cut him down as he runs through. That is the end of this combat, and that is the end of Bretonnia on this entire battlefield. That was a decisive victory for the Daemons. Let's go to final scoring. And the Daemons of Chaos destroyed each unit from the Bretonnian army. And they earned full points for each of those units. Plus they earned the bonus points for capturing 3 unit standards. Plus they earned the bonus points for killing the battle standard bearer and the general. The Daemons scored a grand total of 1,275 points. On the other side, Bretonnia eliminated the Chaos Furies and 1 unit of Fleshhounds. They also decimated one unit of bloodletters, earning 50% of the cost of that unit. So those scores add up to 368 points. Over to the league standings. This was the biggest margin of victory so far in the tournament. The Daemons with the highest score and the Bretonnians with the lowest score. The Daemons will jump up to the first seed in the league with 1 win and 1 loss. Bretonnia sinking towards the bottom with 2 losses. The next battle for the Daemons will be against the Dark Elves in Game 7, and Bretonnia will be back in Game 9 against the Wood Elves. But the next battle on the schedule is Game 6, the Tomb Kings against the Wood Elves. You can look for that coming up next on this channel. And now it's time to announce the Bonepile Miniatures MVP of the game. And this time it was not an easy decision. There were at least 3 units that made a big impact on the battle. But the biggest impact of all came from the Bloodletters teamed up with the Herald of Khorne. They were instrumental in bringing down the unit of the Knights of the Realm, and then they also brought down the Paladin unit of Grail Knights. They were in close combat for 6 player turns. The Bloodletters dealt out 13 wounds, and 5 of those were killing blows. And then Claw added 3 more wounds, and all 3 of his were killing blows. Those killing blows are the kryptonite for those knights. They can normally block a lot of wounds with their armor, but those killing blows from the Hellblades prove to be their demise. Normally I also recognize the MVP of the losing team, but in this case, the Bretonnians struggled all across the board, particularly with their dice rolling. I thought they had a decent strategy, but they may need a new set of dice. The dice they were using might be cursed. If there was any bright spot on the Bretonnian side, it might be the Knights of the Realm in the early part of the game. They saved the lives of the men-at-arms who were fleeing from the Fleshhounds. They eliminated those Fleshhounds with authority, and then they became embattled with the Bloodletters and the Herald of Khorne. In the end, they caused 7 wounds on the Daemons, the most on the Bretonnian side, and they earned 115 points of the Bretonnian score. But now let's look at some essential stats from each team, starting with the Daemons. Charges. They passed every charge they attempted. Close combat. Every unit contributed to the killing, some more than others. 13 wounds from their killing blows. Combat resolution. Bretonnia's stats. Charges. Shooting. And close combat. Combat resolution. And this will conclude this battle report. Thanks for watching. You may check out more content from our club on this YouTube channel and at our hobby blog, which is bonepileminiatures.com. You can find more battle reports like this one, as well as army showcases and discussions, army background stories, and club rules. Thank you for all your views, comments, and support. If you would like to be notified when the next battle report drops, please subscribe to this channel. More Warhammer is coming, and we'll see you on the next one.